you've talked a lot about the corruption in politics, and a core part of the Trump campaign was railing against the establishment, which he thought was corrupted, and a lot of the big donors were initially against him. So which way is the Republican Party going to go on this? Is it Trumpism and the grassroots movement, or the establishment?
Well, I mean, when it comes to money in politics, I think that breakdown doesn't really hold. I mean, the fact is that President Trump, during the campaign, talked routinely about how he engaged in putting money into politics. So, I mean, this is a game that a lot of people are playing. It's kind of a weird question. But as far as the idea that all money should be out of politics, here's the problem. Okay, TYT, we both have corporations, and we expound upon politics every single day. And we motivate thousands of people, right, every day, on both sides of the aisle. That is effectively an in-kind contribution. Now, you campaigned with Bernie Sanders. Did you do it because you expected? That's fine. Did you do that because you supported Bernie Sanders, or did you do that because you expected some gimme for TYT in return? I assume you did it because you supported Bernie Sanders, right?
Yes.
So, okay. So, the point that I am making is to attribute to everyone else bad intent when it comes to political spending in politics, but to yourself, it's totally fine. And when it comes to other media entities that give in-kind contributions on a regular basis through their coverage, this is when the New York Times, which is biased to the left, spends an inordinate amount of time and money reporting on Mitt Romney's idiotic stories about how he was in high school and cutting a gay kid's hair in 1932. If you're saying to me that that is less impactful on the political sphere than a corporation, which is a group giving money to a political candidate for purposes of supporting that candidate, I fail to see how you can say for yourself that you are innocent in this, but everyone else is guilty. I don't believe that. Either everyone's guilty or everybody is innocent, or if you can find the actual cases of guilt where there's a quid pro quo, then we agree. That's prosecutable, right? Yes. So, other point, when you talked about the 2008 economy, you talked about Glass-Steagall and how this led to the crash. The real reason that the crash happened had far less to do with Glass-Steagall. I opposed the bailouts, by the way. It had far less to do with Glass-Steagall than it had to do with the fact that the federal government was actively promulgating the notion that corporations should give subprime mortgages to people who are not qualified as people who could take out loans. This meant that, as you say, corporations are not inherently conservative, they're not inherently free market, they're inherently profit-driven. So if they felt that they could give a bunch of subprime mortgages and this would inflate the real estate prices, and if things went wrong, they just foreclose on the nearest house, and the market just keeps going up and up and up, and they can just, as you say, turn these into derivatives and sell them on the open market by pretending that these are all good loans because they have government backing, then of course you're going to get an inflated, overheated real estate market. But the question there is not the workings of the free market, it's the combination that you like in a mixed economy, that I hate. Okay, I hate mixed economies in the sense that I don't believe that capitalism and socialism should be mixed, that corporatism is the solution. Okay, what you're talking about is corporatism. You're talking about Glass-Steagall, which freed the getting rid of Glass-Steagall, it freed the corporations to invest in a free market manner, but also they gave a bailout to all of these corporations by essentially incentivizing them to give a bunch of bad loans, knowing that if things went bad, then all the losses would be socialized. The problem there is not the free market. The problem there is a government that is acting as a backstop for bad decisions in the free market by profit-driven corporations.
Okay. All right, I love that. There was a lot to respond to there, so let me try to take it one at a time. So first off, I love the idea that the government made the banks do the subprime mortgages, and golly gee, the government twisted the banks' arm, and they made billions upon billions of dollars. Oh man, oh don't make me make another billion. Don't make me make another billion. No, they did those, if they thought they were going to lose money off of it, they would have a fiduciary responsibility not to do it.
I agree.
Okay, they were not forced to make billions of dollars. They were not forced to then have us bail them out.
Right.
They did all of that because there's legalized bribery in America.
Right, because the government was giving them money, correct.
So now let me address that. You say, well, what's the difference between your speech and their speech? Mine is actually speech, and theirs is money. So there's a giant difference.
But you spend money on your speech.
So first off, so they say, no, Supreme Court says, no, money is speech now. No, money is property. It's not speech. And so if money was speech, well, then if you go to a hooker and you say, oh, no, officer, I was just talking to her. Okay, money is not speech. So, for example, to give you a sense of it, to compare me saying I like Bernie Sanders and you saying whoever you like is the equivalent of this is obviously nonsensical. I believe it's obvious. So, in a recent five-year period, the top 200 corporate givers, they both in donations and in lobbying spent $5.8 billion, okay? So that is not the same thing as me saying, hey, I like what Bernie's saying about college and Medicare. And when they did, why do you think they did? It was not because, hey, they genuinely like Bernie or Trump or Hillary. Because in return for that $5.8 billion, they got $4.4 trillion in government subsidies. So, which leads to, I actually think, the biggest point here, the difference between big government and small government. So, a lot of times conservatives say, oh, you guys like big government. That's not true. So, let me explain. If I ask you, hey, you got a plumbing job, what would you like, big pipes or small pipes? I don't know. What's the job we have? It depends. It's the same thing with the government. Okay, what size government would you like? I don't know. What's the job we have? So to say big government or small government doesn't make any sense. So, for example, do I want a big government that invades Iraq? Hell no, I don't. No way. And Ben, you were vociferously for the Iraq war, so in that sense, you loved the big government. Couldn't get enough of it. And I could go on and on and on. Republicans say, no, 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 we don't like big government, but we'd like to be inside your uterus. So just admit it. It's no problem. Just say it. Say I love big government. It's okay. So you're talking about when you like when you're rich and you want tax cuts. Oh no, I don't want big government. I want small government. But when it's convenient for you and you'd like oil subsidies and you'd like wars and you'd like to meddle in people's private lives, then you love big government.
Okay, so I need to respond to some of that.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to point out that Cenk's big government, small government dichotomy was proposed by you, not by me. I talk about the proper scope of the government's involvement in particular areas the same way that you do, and we may disagree on all of that. My point is that overall, if you're talking about the level of government spending, it needs to go down, and you believe that it really needs to go up. Okay, so it's disingenuous.
It depends. Not on war, does it?
No, but overall.
Not on the war on drugs. Not on so many of those wasteful programs. It depends. But let me.
Overall, you want the federal budget increased. Overall, I would like the federal budget decreased. To pretend that this is not true is to lie. Okay, and when you suggest that there is no difference between, we just have different visions of what the government should cover, these things cost different things. Okay, the war in Iraq was very expensive. You know what's more expensive? Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. All of these are vastly more expensive than the war in Iraq and Afghanistan.
We paid into it.
Now, as far as this, again, going back to this idea that, again, I don't like this big government dichotomy any more than you do, in the sense that you say, well, it's big government for the government to get inside people's wombs. And I say that it is the government's job to preserve life, liberty, and property, and one of those things is life. To protect you from someone else taking it. Okay? To protect you from someone else taking it. Now, when it comes to the idea that all money in politics is bad, again, I ask you, final question, final point on, we're going through 10 points at a time here, but final point here. When you say money in politics is bad, again, I ask you, Buddy Roemer gave you $4 million to start TYT. What did he expect in return? Should he not have given you money? Was the money not speech? It was just money, after all. It's just like a hooker, I assume. So are you the prostitute? How did this work? When you take money from Al Jazeera, does that make you a hooker for the Qataris? How does that work?
That was an awesome conflation. Okay, we were talking about money in politics and how money is not speech when you give it as a campaign donation, and you turn it around to a business investment. In a business investment, it has nothing to do with speech. Money is money. They gave us an investment, because they believed in our business. That has nothing to do with politics.
That's great. And you think the government is in the business of regulating business. So if the government is in the business of regulating business, what would be the problem with the government telling Buddy Roemer he is not allowed to invest in your business?
No, those are two different issues. No problem. No, one thing is to say, hey, let's set reasonable limitations on what can happen around elections, which is, again, what most developed Western countries do. So, and they have different versions of that rule. There's ads you can run, you can't run ads within a certain period of time. You have public financing versus private financing. Those are rules around an election. That is a completely different issue than the government saying randomly you can and you can't invest in businesses. So
Why?
you're conflating those two issues that have nothing to do with one another.
Why?
So let's just
Wait, what does why mean?
Because it's
those
a-
are
because
two. Hey,
it is-
why? Hey, you know,
because-
you believe in education,
Real quick,
so
very
why don't you
quick.
believe in healthcare?
Because it's a free country, and I get to spend my money wherever I damn well please.
so as we're coming to the close here, we're going to do one
Okay,
more.
I gotta ask him. All
right, very quick,
So
very
you
quick,
damn
though.
well please. Okay, so when the Koch brothers or Bloomberg or Soros puts in hundreds of millions of dollars into elections, you think, well, I just do them because they're good guys and they damn well please buying all those politicians. Or you think, no, the politicians would never be affected by hundreds of millions of dollars in legalized bribes.
Okay.
And you can't just spend your money anywhere you want. Of course there are rules. You can't bribe people.
Right.
There's many things you can't do with your money. And one of those should be bribing politicians, but we made it legal.
Cenk-
So I'm curious what your opinion on that is.
So, okay,
do you
so-
think that they're just golly shucks,
Cenk-
they just mean well? And
Cenk, you're a lawyer, so you know that bribery requires two parties to the bribe. If I give money to a politician, there must be something in return. If there is no quid pro quo, there is no bribery.
you think there's nothing in return?
Well, you have to
think the politicians don't do those favors?
I think very often there is something in return, but I want you to point me to the things that are in return, not just say that all spending on politics ought to be forbidden except for the Young Turks.
No, that is of course not what we say. If you want to get money out of politics and then you said the Young Turks cannot donate money to politicians, I'd say, of course, that's the whole point of getting money out of politics.
Wait, so Cenk.
So this idea that you,
Cenk,
well,
come
hey,
on,
what?
come on.
It's so disingenuous.
Cenk.
Even if you're a Republican and you're a conservative, you think there isn't crony capitalism? You think that $4.4 trillion
Cenk.
that went in subsidies
Final
isn't
question.
because they got campaign donations? You know it's because they
Cenk,
got campaign
Cenk.
donations.
Cenk, okay, final question.
This is gonna be the last word on
Final
this.
thing here
Last
on this,
word.
okay? Final question on this. So, Young Turks is super successful. We have 80 million uniques. It's wonderful. Do you think
Thank
Bernie
you.
Sanders would care more if you gave him $10,000 or if you dedicated your entire network to kissing his ass for an election cycle?
All right. So, two things about this. First of all, I think you and I will agree. That what we did in praising some of Bernie's programs, a lot of Bernie's programs, but not all. For example, I disagreed with him on guns, and I thought Hillary's education program was slightly better than Bernie's. And by the way, I agree with the Republicans on the Export-Import Bank. So it's not blind allegiance. That is not what we do, not remotely, okay? Second of all, I think you'll agree with me that the mainstream media kissing Hillary Clinton's ass for 2 straight years was a much bigger problem.
Would you outlaw
Now,
it?
the distinction that you're asking for,
Would you outlaw that?
you're asking for, and now I've answered, I think 4 times, is one is speech, and by the way, protected, you said life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I think we all agree to that. I got a big applause line. I also agree. And in our Constitution, the First Amendment is right to speech and freedom of the press. So that is that rubric. Money is not in the First Amendment. There is no right to spend money on politicians. Money is money, speech is speech.